So 3.5 is about polynomial and rational inequalities. So the difference between this and what we've been doing is now you have a less than or greater than symbol, right? Instead of an equality, which is an equals. So the huge thing is after you solve, you have to use a number line to find your final answers, which are going to be intervals. Your answers will always be intervals. They're not just like 5 or 7. It's like, negative infinity to 5 or something like that. So I'll show you, okay? So the very easiest problem we can do is something like this. So let's say you have x squared is less than or equal to 4x plus 12. So obviously, you're going to go ahead and subtract that 4x and that 12 to the other side. And then you're going to factor. And then you have two options. You have a positive 6 and a negative 2. But those aren't final answers. So what you're going to do is you're going to write this with a question mark. And then you're going to be like, okay, I need to find a number, use a number line to determine where you're positive or negative. So I'm going to show you first. But what you do is you draw the number line. And then you make sure that this is in order. So negative 2 comes first. So negative 2 is less than 6. So the negative 2 comes here and the 6 comes here. So it looks something like this. And then what you're going to do is, because this is a less than or equal to, you're going to put a point here. You're going to put a point here. Let's go ahead and ignore these zeros. So we already solved for 0. That's fine. And then right now you have this, right? So then you're trying to determine over here to the left of negative 2, are you positive or negative? So how you can check is you choose any number. So like what's to the left of negative 2? You could choose like negative 5. So if you plug in negative 5, you get a negative, and then you get a negative. A negative times a negative is positive. If you test, let's say, like a 0, you plug in a 0, you get a negative and a positive. If you multiply a negative and a positive, you get a negative. And then one more time, you can plug in even like a 10. So plug in a 10, you get a positive times a positive, which is positive. Okay, what are you looking for here? You're looking for less than or equal to 0. So you're looking for negatives, which is between the negative 2 and the 6. And it includes the negative 2 and the 6. So then you have those brackets as well. So that is like the easiest kind that you could do. Okay. So let's say you have something like this. X to the 4th is greater than x. The huge thing to remember is that you cannot divide away the x's. So I want you to think about how come you can't divide away the x's. Because you might be dividing a 0. So you can't divide by 0. We don't know what x is. And then 2, you could be dividing a negative. If you're dividing a negative, your sign has to change, right? You have to switch. You have to do less than. So we cannot divide anything away. Instead, we're going to subtract to the other side. We're going to factor. You realize this is SOAP, so a difference of cubes. So you do your SOAP. Same, opposite, always positive. And then you take a look at this, and you realize that this is not real. So not only is this not factorable, which we'll deal with later, but also if you do the quadratic formula, what happens is your determinant is negative 3. If your determinant is negative 3, then really this is going to give you imaginary zeros, okay? So you can only use the 0 and the 1 from here. So I'm going to put a question mark, so 0 and 1. And then you do your number line. And again, with the number line, we don't need those zeros. With the number line, we just put it in order. And then I look here and I go, okay, this is an open circle. This is an open circle. I do my little plus minuses. I plug into here, plug into here, plug into here. So like I have to plug in, let's say like a 1/2. If I plug it in, I get a positive. If I plug it in, I get a negative. If I plug any positive in here, I get a positive. So it's not even that hard plugging in 1/2. So then you plug in a 1/2, and then you get a positive times a negative times a positive, which is negative. And then you do the same for 2 numbers over here, and then you get this. And then you're looking for positive answers greater than 0. So this portion and this portion. Be careful of your brackets and parentheses and all that stuff. So from here all the way to 0, and then from 1 all the way to infinity. Okay, so let's try something similar but different. So let's say you have this. So there's 2 ways to start this. You can either multiply both sides by x plus 2, or you can subtract the 3 over to the left side. One of those is no good. The one that's no good is multiplying. How come? Because if you multiply, you might be multiplying by a negative, and if you multiply by a negative, that sign changes. So we cannot multiply away any x's. We can't do that. We can't divide away any x's. So you subtract to the other side, and then if you do this in one step, you realize that you also have to have an x plus 2 on the bottom. So you're going to multiply the 3 by x plus 2, and then you get this. And then go ahead and deal with your numerators, and you get x minus 1 over x plus 2. This gives you two values that you have to check. So the 1 and the negative 2. And then you draw your number line with the 1 and the negative 2. And I'm going to go like this. Again, I'm going to look here and decide, do I have points or do I have holes? So at the negative 2, normally I would have a point, but negative 2 is a denominator, and I can't have a negative 2. That's actually my vertical asymptote, right? So this is a hole, and this one right here, that's a point, because that says greater than or equal to. You do your plus minuses, you're looking for positive values, so it's from negative infinity to negative 2, from 1 to positive infinity, and the 1 has a bracket. Okay, number 4, second to last. So number 4, I'll keep it here. So let's say you have something like this. So you have something like this, you're going to try to factor the top, it's not factorable. And then you're going to check the determinant, and the determinant is positive. So unfortunately, you got to use a quadratic formula. So if you use a quadratic formula, x equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, and then you have to find your x values from the quadratic formula, which I did for you, which is, so I found the determinant, it's positive, and then here's your quadratic formula x values. Okay, so you should be able to do that with enough time. Okay, so you have this, and then I still have to deal with the 8. So this is 2 numbers, and then the 8 is your third number. Okay, I'm going to draw this first with you. So I know I have 1, 2, 3 numbers that I have to try out, but I have to determine where they go. Okay, so 5 minus root 13 over 2, I'm pretty sure that's on the very left side, because that is a negative. Actually, that's just a very small number. Okay, so how I'm going to figure out this number with the pluses is, what is 5 over 2? It's like 2.5. What is root 13? So root 13 we know is between a 3 and a 4, right? Because this is between 9 and 16. So I know this is less than 4. 4 divided by 2 is 2. So this whole thing, 5 plus root 13 over 2, is less than 2.5 plus 2, which is 4.5. So this positive version should be less than 4.5, which is definitely less than 8. So I know it goes right here, 5 plus root 13 over 2, and then the 8 goes over here. Okay, so you do have to figure that out on your own. On the homework, you can use a calculator for this next part with the pluses and minuses. You're going to plug in a number to the very left. A number to the very left would be like, let's say, -5, right? -7. And then you're going to plug in a number right in between these two. So you actually know what that is. The number right in between 5 plus or minus root 13 over 2 is 5 over 2. Right? If these are the roots, isn't the axis of symmetry x equals 5 over 2? So 2.5, you would have to plug into here and see if you get a positive or negative. And then you would have to plug into here and then you get a negative. So you can do that with a calculator for your homework, but you have to be able to do that for real, even if it takes, a few minutes, and then get these values. Again, I'm going to get rid of this one and this one and this one because we normally don't really need that, but we do need to figure out what are these going to be. So this is all less than, so it's an open, 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 and it can't be 8 anyway for sure because that's a denominator. Okay, I want less than, so I want this portion and this portion over here. So that's going to be from negative infinity to 5 minus root 13 over 2, and then jump 5 plus 13 over 2 all the way to positive 8. Okay, So last one on the notes. Okay. Number 5. So I gave you this hint right here, but you cannot cross multiply. You cannot cross multiply. How come? Because you don't know what you're multiplying by, and if it's a negative, it's going to mess with your symbol. Okay? So instead, what are you going to do? Subtract. You can subtract in either way. I'm going to subtract over to the left. I have my greater or equal to 0 now over on the right side. And then you got to deal with these denominators. So you just treat this like an equal sign until you solve for x's, basically, and then we use the number line. So I think you should try it. I think you should pause and try it, and don't be lazy. I think you should actually do it. And then you can slowly check your work. So common denominators, still greater than 0, right? So you got to multiply this by x minus 1, multiply this by x plus 1. Do all the multiplying. So multiply it all out. And then go ahead and deal with your numerator. And you get this. And then this is factorable. Oh, lucky you. So then you factor. You get 4 numbers to test out. You get a -3, a +2, a plus or minus 1. Put it in a number line. And then in that number line, here's the number line. I'm going to get rid of these because they're kind of in our way. And then I look at this and I go, okay, my denominators were a -1 and a +1. So those are open because it can't be those values. And then the rest are closed dots. And I want to be greater than 0. So I want this answer and this answer and this answer. So you should have 3 intervals as your final answer. So -∞ to -3, bracket, and then parentheses right here, and then a bracket on 2 all the way to infinity. Okay, so give that a try. Good luck, guys.